Welcome back to the Us versus Them channel. I'm your host Vince, and we're going to break down the next fight for the upcoming fight night this weekend. We got Kyle Prepolec versus Drew Dober. Right now, Prepolec is sitting at a plus 330 underdog, and Drew Dober is sitting at a minus 420 favorite. Before we get into the breakdown, if I can remind you guys, hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, all that bullshit, help us get back into the algorithm, or get into the algorithm, I guess. And yeah, so thanks for watching, guys. We have seen time and time again in the past for Kyle Prepolec that the one thing that really lets him down in fights, the one thing that really slows him down is the wrestling and the takedown defense. You know, we've seen that on the regional scene. You know, this is his second stint in the UFC. His first stint in the UFC, he went 0-2, had trouble with the takedowns against Austin Hubbard. I watched that fight. You know, I watched this fight that he lost on the regional scene, and he was struggling with, defending takedowns and getting up off bottom position. And obviously we saw that too in his most recent fight against Benoit Saint Denis. So we saw that, we've seen that time and time again, that, defending takedowns, and, that's just something that holds him back. So in this fight, the easiest path to victory for Drew Dober is definitely going to look for those takedowns. He does have a wrestling base. So, and earlier in his career, he leaned on his wrestling. He had more decision wins because of his, leaning on his wrestling a little bit. But, recently, when I say recently, I mean like the last, 7, 8, 10 fights that he's had, he's leaning on his boxing a lot more and kind of getting away from his wrestling. So even though I do believe that that is the path to victory for him, the one thing that I ask myself is Drew Dober actually going to make a solid attempt at a takedown? I've seen in the past few fights or whatever, he kind of uses it almost as a setup to land a strike, but, he's not really going for a solid takedown. So that's just the real question. There's a clear path to beating Kyle Prepolec, but is Drew Dober actually going to exploit that? And it's really hard to answer. Every fight starts on the feet, so we got to definitely talk about, a little bit of the striking. The first thing that I thought that was worth noting is they're both southpaw fighters. So sometimes you have two southpaw fighters. It kind of looks a little bit clunky, except if it's not two guys who kind of grew up doing this. This wasn't their base discipline. So, for Prepolec, obviously this is more of his base discipline. He's more of a striker by trade, but, it takes two to tango. So I think that this has potential to at least start out looking a little bit clunky. Like I said, they're both southpaws, so they're both looking to, uncork that left hand. But between the two of them, it seems like Prepolec can be sometimes a little bit left-centric and looking to be a little bit too focused on the left hand. And obviously in striking or grappling or anything else in MMA, you got to set opponents up. So, spamming out left hands is just not something that's going to get the job done, especially against a high level, or maybe not high level, but a veteran like Drew Dober. I think Drew Dober probably does a better job of setting up his strikes on his feet. He actually implements his jab a little bit before he uncorks the left. So that not only does he do that, but he also does a pretty good job of staying moving when he's on his feet. So he's, moving target, he's a little bit harder to hit. Kyle Prepolec is a little bit more of a kickboxing base. He does tend to kind of focus a little bit on his hands, but he has good kicks as well. Drew Dober has kicks, but I think that, blending in the kickboxing discipline and not just kicking while you're boxing is something that Kyle Prepolec probably does a little bit better. So when they're out in space, I think Prepolec is probably going to have a little bit more, I don't know if he'll have an advantage, but he'll have definitely more of an arsenal. I think at some point in this fight, they're definitely going to come together and clash, and, we're going to be landing some strikes in close range. I kind of think that's inevitable in this fight. It seems like it's almost inevitable in every single Drew Dober fight, and, Prepolec, like I said, he's going to have, I don't know if he'll have the advantage in the striking, but that's his path to victories in the striking. So he's going to welcome striking no matter what range it is. I mean, it's definitely essential that he's prepared for, every range of striking, So like I said, I think at some point they're going to clash. They're going to come in and, people are going to get hit. And the one thing that really sticks out for me when I was breaking down these fights is, Drew Dober kind of depending on his chin a little bit later in his career, and now all of a sudden he's getting knocked out a lot. He's been knocked out, 4 times? Let me check here. He's been knocked out 4 times total, but 3 of those are in the last 5 fights. So he's 1-4 in his last 5, and 3 of those come by way of knockout. And we're starting to see his chin kind of slowly disintegrating. And you see that in every single striker, every single fighter in general, when they have a really good chin, almost a legendary chin, at some point it's going to give on you. It's just inevitable. So it just makes me wonder, are we seeing the downfall, I guess, of Drew Dober's chin? So for this reason alone, and this is the only reason, I'm going to pick Kyle Prepolec to get this one done, and I think he's going to get done by knockout. I think eventually he's going to find that shot, whether it's early on in the fight or it could be in the second or third round even. They're going to come in close range, and Prepolec is going to smoke him. So even in fights where Drew Dober has won recently, the Bobby Green fight, for instance, he got touched at some points and wobbled or even knocked down. So just seen too much of Drew Dober's chin kind of failing him. So we're going with Kyle Prepolec by KO. That prop is sitting at plus 700 right now. So that's obviously a huge prop. It's an awesome prop. But if you're feeling Drew Dober, honestly, it's really kind of hard to pick a method of victory for him. He can win a decision fight. I think that's least likely, but I can definitely see a submission for him. So if he's using the wrestling, staying on top, doing all that shit, that prop is sitting at plus 850, the submission. So there's some good value in that too. Either way, I definitely think that this is going to be a fight that's going to work its way into the parlay. I think there's a lot of value in this fight. I really love throwing in long shots into parlays that I think have a legit chance in hitting. Plus 700, plus 850, there's legit chances in hitting those. So stop by here soon before I give you my parlay video. You guys can tail that if you want or whatever, but I definitely see this one making it in there, so see how we do that. And yeah, stop by for our next video. We're breaking down Azamat Bekaev versus Yusri Belangori. Obviously that's a good fight. It's going to be a sick fight. So I definitely see a path to victory on that one, and I got a pretty good idea already. So stop by for that one. And I'm done rambling, guys. I'm the fuck out of here.